And off we go, Stuart.
Okay, right. Good afternoon, everybody. Nice to see you all again on this lovely sunny day. I bet many of you have been out walking this morning. It's like a spring day out there, glorious, but make the most of it because I think the rain is on its way tomorrow. I'm really delighted this afternoon to welcome Dawn Waterman and Miriam Grabiner, particularly in timing terms. Yesterday was International Women's Day. Dawn is, I better read it off there so I get it right. Board of Deputies, Archives and Heritage Manager. She leads the board's Hidden Treasures project and is going to share some of the treasures from Jewish archives in Britain that celebrate the women in our community from the 1870s to the 1980s. Dawn is joined by Miriam Grabiner of helsped.org, which is just one of the archives included in the Hidden Treasures. So Dawn, over to you.
Great. Okay, I'm going to do that horrible share screening thing. Let's see if I can do it. Does that work?
We can see you, Dawn, but you need to share your screen if you want to start.
Yeah, wait a minute. Okay, we there?
No.
No.
No. Share screen.
Sorry, wait a minute. Ah. Right, just 1 second while I do this. Uh-oh. Right. Okay. Sorry about that.
Don't worry, take your time.
Yeah.
Mother.
No,
Well,
there
you
we
know that.
There
Last night I wanted to listen to another video. Martin Lewis was talking about money in one of the shorts.
I'll find that in a minute.
I'll find that in a minute. Sound.
Is it
I got
there?
through to the meeting, and I've done it again today.
Can somebody mute themselves there, please?
I can't see who it is, but I will do it in a minute. Okay, Miriam, off you go.
No, in fact, it's going to be me. So I'm Dawn. I'm Dawn.
Sorry.
Sorry, don't worry. I'm the Archives and Heritage Manager.
Pardon?
Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Yes, I did. Yes. Yeah. I've got no sound.
You know who the person? Shall I keep going?
Hang on just a second. Let Ronnie silence her. Is that all right, Ronnie, now?
Yes, I think so.
Good. Okay, away you go.
Sorry about that. So I'm Dawn. I'm the Archives and Heritage Manager at the Board of Deputies. That's the democratically elected body that represents the UK's Jewish community to government, to the media, and to the diplomatic community. Now, Bushy United has
I've got no sound. Now, sometimes...
At the top, the sound.
Okay, I've silenced that person. So,
okay. So Bushy United's got 4 deputies. That's Geoffrey Norman, Ella Rose, Paul Jacobus, and Roger Offenbach. And they're just 4 of the 322 deputies that represents synagogues and communal organisations. So really, thank you very much indeed for inviting Miriam and I to Sage. Please feel free to send us a message via the chat. We're really hoping that our presentations will spark comments or memories or questions or thoughts. So don't feel shy, please don't feel shy. So at the Board of Deputies, we're very proud to be leading Hidden Treasures, celebrating Jewish archives in Britain. Really, it does what it says on the tin. It celebrates the archives, Miriam's helsped.org amongst them, that tell the stories of Jews in Britain. And we do this by featuring treasures from these archives, by having events, and by doing presentations like this one. So as you've heard, this is the week of International Women's Day. So I've chosen women as my theme. Not that we need a day really to celebrate the Aisha tiles in our community. So first, just a very quick bit about the project. We've got more than 50 archives involved, and then the Brent archives have just joined us, but we haven't yet got actually the Hertfordshire archives. So I've made the note for myself that I was contacting them. And we describe our archives on the website you can see here on www.celebratingjewishArchives.org. And we link directly to the archived websites so the visitor can explore them. We've got huge archives involved, the government's National Archives. That's the one at Kew. It used to be called the Public Record Office. The Imperial War Museum, the British Library, the Tate, the British Film Institute, but also small ones, really small ones like the archive of Nicholas Winton. Do you remember the gentleman who rescued all the children on the kinder transport from Prague? We've got his archive that's in fact curated by his daughter. Lots of Jewish archives, as you'd imagine. Some that you'll know about, the Wiener Holocaust Library, the Jewish Museum, do you know about the AJR, the Association of Jewish Refugees, their Refugee Voices, archives in Scotland and Wales, but also maybe archives that you don't know about, like Jews of the RAF, like We Were There Too, about Jewish youth servicemen, and hesped.org that Miriam's going to be telling you about in a second. We've got university archives, UCL, Manchester, Southampton. There's huge Anglo-Jewish archive at Southampton, Leeds, Hull, Sussex. Also lots of local archives, archives really where there either were or there are Jewish communities. Tyne and Wear, I know Miriam's from that part of the country, so she knows about that. Birmingham, Leeds, Plymouth, where of course there used to be a community, Liverpool, also the London Metropolitan Archives, and lots of London boroughs. And the Jewish Chronicle, which has a fantastic archive in its own, is our media partner. Now, I promised, though, that I'd be showing you some treasures. So here we go. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, very good. Okay, so the first one is from the Brady Photographic Archive. Don't know if any of you were involved with the Brady Club in the East End. In fact, to be honest, the whole archive is a hidden treasure. There are several hundred photos between the 1940s and 1970s that were lost and then were found in someone's loft. The first Brady Club for working lads was established in 1896 in the East End of London. And it was driven by Lady Rothschild to improve the social quality of life for Yiddish-speaking boys from Eastern Europe. In 1925, Miriam Moses established Girls' Club, and the two merged in 1960 in Hanbury Street, in the building there. This particular photo, which obviously is the girls sipping Coke or whatever in the cafeteria in Hanbury Street. Many of our archives are still collecting materials. So if you've got anything of interest, perhaps to the Brady Archive, or in fact to any of the other archives I talk about today, then they'd love you to get in touch. The next one shows a rather different group of girls. It's from AJR, that's the Association of Jewish Refugee Voices. And it shows Ruth Damson, she's the third from the left, kind of in the middle, in the Bluebell Wood at Bunce Court, which was a school in Kent in 1939. Ruth and her parents came from Breslau to escape Nazi persecution. Ruth's parents were promptly interned as enemy aliens, and Ruth was sent to Bunce Court, where, by all accounts, she had the most fantastic time. AJR Refugee Voices is an archive of film and filmed interviews, really, and so it's really well worth having a look at. This next one is from another archive of testimonies of oral histories. It's from Sephardi Voices UK, which is an archive of the stories of Jews from Arabic-speaking countries. This particular one is the passport of a lady called Nissan Masoon Tiran. She was born in 1957 in Baghdad. She'd only ever had one passport. Jews weren't allowed to have passports. And she got this one in 1973, which enabled her to leave. And if you look, it gives a list of all the countries that this passport can be used in. In fact, we have a speaker. I'm going to tell you a bit later on about events that we do. And on Sunday, we've got an event all about oral history, about songs and about oral history. And a lady from Sephardic Voices is going to be there. So I hope you can join us. I'll tell you more. So this one is from the London Metropolitan Archives. I don't know if you've ever been down there. It's in Farringdon. And it's one of the most important archives in terms of telling the Jewish story. It's absolutely well worth a look, well worth a visit. So when they reopen, I'd really urge you to go and have a look. It contains the papers of really most of the major London-based Jewish organisations. So the Board of Deputies, our archive is there, and they've got the very first minute book of the Board of Deputies from 1760, which of course is written in Portuguese because the Board of Deputies was set up by the Deputados in 1760. It contains the London Metropolitan Archives have got the archives of the Office of the Chief Rabbi, the London Beth Din, the Spanish and Portuguese congregations, the United Synagogue, the Federation, the Jews' Temporary Shelter, the Soup Kitchen in Stepney, and of course from the Jewish Free School. I don't know if there anyone here who was a pupil at JFS. Quite likely there was. This one shows girls from JFS when it was at Bell Lane in the East End in 1908. Of course, JFS, it started in 1732 as the Talmud Torah of the Great Synagogue. And it was set up to educate orphan boys or orphans in the East End. It went to Bell Lane in 1822. Then later on to Camden Town, and then to Kenton. Doesn't look like JFS now. So another school, a rather different type of school, is Manchester High School for Girls, which is an independent school in Manchester. This is a portrait from 1874 of Abigail Behrens, who was one of the school's founders. She was involved with the Manchester Association for the Promotion of the Education of Women, and she was a school governor there. In fact, one of the houses in the prep school now is named after her. All right, now this is quite a different kind of thing. I mentioned that we have there are pictures that this is from a university library. Or university archive at Leeds University. I don't know whether any of you would remember, but I certainly do remember Shifra, which was a Jewish feminist. It was supposed to be the voice of Jewish feminism. There were only 4 issues of it. It appeared between 1984 and 1986. Leeds University is perhaps better known, I don't know, for the Cecil Roth Archive, which is the Cecil Roth Art Collection is there. In fact, Leeds in the 1980s was quite a hotbed of radicalism. They had JCOR, the Jewish the Council for Racial Equality, Jonah, which was Jews organised for a nuclear arms halt, and Shifra and Women's Aid, Jewish Women's Aid was set up there. Leeds also has a Jewish community archive, which is at Macor, which is popular Jewish. Also, staying in Leeds, this is the West Yorkshire Archive Service. This actually is one of my favourite images. It we used it, in fact, we used it in the launch of the Hidden Treasures project in July. It's of the some workers at the Burton Menswear factory. Do you remember? You'll remember Burton's, which very sadly Arcadia went into liquidation this year. But Burton Menswear was a very successful chain of shops. You all know that. Founded by Nesher David Osinski, who was a Jewish immigrant from Kovno in Lithuania. He was born in 1988. Once he came to England, he became Montague Burton, and he set up his first shop in Chesterfield in 1903. Burton's shops and factories were hugely successful. They made military uniforms and D-mob clothes. In fact, you know the expression, the full Monty? You've probably seen the film. The full Monty meant a full D-mob suit, everything you'd need. Montague Burton was a very, very good employer, and this picture shows, which was found, it was found in an envelope actually, it was found in an envelope marked welfare. It shows doctors, and he had doctors, he had dentists for his workers, and he had the sunroom. So if you got a medical certificate saying that a sunroom would be beneficial to you, and you worked at in Burton's, you could use this sunroom. It dates from 1930s. We don't know exactly when. This one is, I guess I move on to kind of staying with the theme of women and work, I suppose. This is actually a cutting from the Jewish Chronicle. And of course, they have the most marvelous archive of their own. I don't know if you ever looked at those ledgers of old copies of the Jewish Chronicle. I mean, they're completely fascinating. So this is a cutting from the JC, and it shows Miri Lawrence and Elena Rothman, who are preparing to be ordained at the Liberal Jewish Synagogue in St. John's Wood in 1992. I love the movement of this picture, actually. Another woman at work, again from Refugee Voices. This is Eleanor Lederman, and who was a celebrity chocolatier. She was born in Milan in 1917. Her parents were from Istanbul, but the family moved to Belgium. She survived the war in Belgium in hiding, and came to England in 1955, and was one of the first people in Britain to open a chocolate shop. Does anyone know where Eleanor's was? I don't. I know Ackerman's, which was on the Finchley Road, which was near where I live, but Eleanor's, I don't know. Don't know. Moving on, I guess, to the arts, really. Also part of the Hidden Treasures family, we've got the Ben Uri Gallery and Museum. This is, I just love the colours on this one. It's a 1997 painting by Dora Holtzhandler. She was a Polish Jewish artist born in Paris. She came to the UK in 1934, and she died in London in 2015. The Ben Uri, I'm sure you'll know, was founded in 1915 in Whitechapel. Mostly has works by Jewish artists, and they've now gone entirely online. So that's kind of interesting. Staying with the arts, also part of the Hidden Treasures Network is the British Film Institute. They have the most fantastic Jewish Britain on film collection. This image is from a short silent film. I think it's one of the first kind of wedding films that there was. It's of the marriage of Miss Rose Carmel and Mr. Sonny Gershowitz. Now, Mr. Gershowitz, I assume, was once Mr. Gershowitz with a Z, but for some reason, when they came to England, they dropped the Z. Perhaps it sounded too foreign, and became Mr. Gershowitz. And the film shows the bride and the groom leaving the family shop at 50 Brick Lane and traveling to the reception, I suppose, for their wedding, which was a kind of garden party. It was obviously a warm day because they're all in in summer clothes, and they're dancing to the San Diego Dance Band. And it's from 1925. If you get a chance to have a look on the BFI's website, I really recommend you have a look. And then staying with the arts and coming towards the end, we've got a poster from the Jewish Museum, Schwer zu sein Yid, Hard to be a Jew, from the 1920s Yiddish comedy by Sholem Aleichem. It was premiered in New York, but it was later performed at the Grand Palais in Commercial Road. Obviously, the great Yiddish actress Anna Zelnicka. Now, one of the kind of themes of hidden treasures is something we call Your Treasures, and that's where we invite members of the public to send in treasures that they may well have at home. So this was one that was sent in to us. It's a 1930s picture of the Princess of Wales Lodge, which was obviously a friendly society, kind of a safety net before the welfare state. They look rather formidable ladies, don't you think? But obviously the precursors, I suppose, of our ladies' guilds and all our welfare organisations. We've had all kinds of treasures sent in, pictures of. There's a wall hanging, a really beautiful wall hanging that you put on the eastern wall of your room, I suppose, to show you where to pray to. We've had people's medals from the war. We've had all kinds of memorabilia to do with people who've immigrated to this country. So I don't know if you've got anything interesting at home, you'd like to share a picture, we'd love to see it. And I mentioned that we have events. So we've got an event, in fact, on Sunday called Voices from the Archives, where we'll be talking about songs, Yiddish songs, songs from synagogues in Victorian times, but also life stories. We've got someone from Sephardi Voices, as I mentioned, and someone from Gathering the Voices, which is a Scottish family life story project. And I guess that idea of life stories feeds into or links on to Miriam now. So this is me. Get in touch. Please do get in touch. And over to Miriam.
Sorry, just before Miriam starts, Dawn, in
Sure.
terms of contact for the event on Sunday,
Yeah.
should they just contact you direct and you'll give them the link?
Yep. Or else I can send it to you or whatever.
Yeah.
Yes.
Send it to Daphne, I suppose.
I'll send it to Daphne. She can circulate it. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Perfect.
Miriam.
Sorry, Miriam, over to you.
Thank you. Am I on screen?
You are.
Hello. Let me just share my screen with you.
Very good.
Can you see my Hesped logo?
We can.
Okay. Hello. Thank you, Dawn. What a fabulous selection of images from the Hidden Treasures archives. I think I'd love to see that 1920s wedding film. Look, I just hanker after that headpiece looks fantastic. Hello, I'm Miriam Grabiner. I'm the founder of Hesped, and this is an online treasury of funeral and shiva eulogies. We're very proud to be included in the Board of Deputies celebrating Jewish Archives project. This is the first time I've done a presentation on Zoom about Hesped, so it feels like a Shehecheyanu moment, an opportunity to thank God, particularly at this time, who has kept us alive and supported us and brought us to this season. My niece Kate used the metaphor of an hourglass in a beautiful eulogy for her grandmother, who was my mother. As Jews, I think we have an inherent sense of time and the passage of time. In our Jewish practices, we pray our daily prayers, Shacharit, Mincha, Mariv. We celebrate Shabbat each week. We name the new month on Rosh Chodesh, and the year's rhythm is set by festivals. As members of communities, we celebrate life cycle events such as births and marriages and support one another at difficult times like illness and bereavements. And we honor yard sites on the anniversaries of deaths. So throughout our lives, we are constantly reminded that time is passing. We're not here forever. Our lives are finite. As Psalm 103 says, in a slightly different metaphor, man, his days are like grass. He blooms like a flower of the field. A wind passes, and it is no more. I think this awareness of time encourages us to be mindful of how we lead our lives. When we die, which at some point we all must, it is for others to try and sum up who we were and the lives we had, which brings us to the subject of eulogies, or in Hebrew, hespedim. Let's see the mitzvah of eulogizing in Torah, in Genesis, Bereshit. Parshat Chaye Sarah, when Abraham's wife Sarah dies. Ve'avo Avraham lispot l'Sarah v'livkota. Abraham proceeded to mourn Sarah and to cry for her. So as Jews, we have a very long tradition of eulogizing. I've always been fascinated by the stories we hear when someone has passed away. It seemed a great shame that these precious stories were being lost. So after my own parents died, and then a number of years of pondering the subject, in 2019, I decided to develop an online treasury of eulogies to collect and preserve funeral and shiva hespedim. And there are some from stone settings as well. I believe these powerful and unique tributes are valuable. They tell the stories of Jewish lives, some seemingly quite ordinary and others extraordinary. Some are particularly eloquent and others are simple, yet express that most fundamental emotion of love. But all are important and inspiring. Hespedim tell us about who someone was, not just a CV of what they did. They tell us about love and the importance of family, surviving adversity and overcoming challenges, the experience of immigration, success and happiness, often in the shadow of the Shoah. In this awful COVID year, when we've not been able to gather as usual at funerals and shivers in person, the website has also offered a way in which hespedim can be shared. So far, there are over 60 people whose loved ones have contributed hespedim to the collection, and these are fairly split between men and women. But as we are marking International Women's Day this week, I thought I'd introduce you to two of the many interesting women whose life stories we're holding in the hesped.org archive. Now, each hesped has a shape and a form, and they make sense as a whole piece. So I think it is hard to pick particular quotes out of context, but I would like to give you an impression of what you can find in the collection and invite you to visit the website to read the hespedim in full. So first of all, we have Wendy Cates. There are two wonderful hespedim for Wendy, one written by her son on behalf of Wendy's children and family, and the other by her close friend and sometime colleague, Rabbi Tony Bayfield. You might be more familiar with Wendy Cates as Dr. Wendy Greengross, one of the great social pioneers of her generation. As Rabbi Tony said, she belonged to a trio of agony aunts, with Marjorie Proops, who was older, and Claire Rayner, who was younger. All were Jewish, but only Wendy was a committed practicing Jew. Apart from her primary career as a GP, along with her husband, her regular Dr. Wendy column in The Sun publications on many subjects such as sex education and disability. She was an advisor on the TV soap opera Crossroads. Do you remember Crossroads? I bet you're mentally humming the theme tune now. And she put one of the lead characters in a wheelchair, which was pretty groundbreaking for the time. But for all her professional accomplishments, which are illuminated in these tributes, Wendy's family still consider her most important role was as wife, mother, sister, and grandmother. She managed to combine all aspects of her life, and all despite grief. She lost a son and her husband, and illness, which afflicted her for a long time. But she stands as a marvelous example to the generations of women who follow her. And incidentally, Wendy was someone who was prepared to address issues around aging and dying long before these were part of a more mainstream conversation. And here is Jo Wageman. I'm sure many of you will be familiar with the former head teacher of JFS, and very fitting for today, the first woman president of the Board of Deputies. I believe she was a formidable woman. As her son Anthony said, she was a fighter, both feared and revered. In his hesped for his mother, Anthony tells the following story. There was also another time when I won a lottery prize draw from a national radio station. The prize was an all expenses paid trip to America for our whole family. This had to be taken within certain restricted dates only, which unhelpfully coincided exactly with when a major event at work was occurring, excuse me, which I was partially responsible for organising. Surprisingly, my boss was not willing to give me the time off and asked me if I could call the radio station to request they change the dates. Equally unsurprisingly, they refused, citing all kinds of competition rules, flight restrictions, and so on. After several fruitless conversations with various senior radio station executives, in which I begged, threatened, and cajoled in equal measure, I was finally put through to the senior commercial head responsible for sponsorships and promotions. I immediately launched into my carefully prepared diatribe, threatening variously use of force, the Consumers Association, and even the EU Bill of Human Rights. None of this appeared to be making any impact at all, until the commercial director suddenly stopped me mid-flow and asked, "What did you say your name was again?" "Anthony Wageman," I said. A pause ensued. "Are you related to Jo Wageman?" he asked. "Yes," I said, "she's my mother. Do you know her?" Another long pause, then a sharp exhalation of breath. His voice again, somewhat quieter and more tense. "She was my headmistress. I'll see to it right away," he said, then quickly adding, "and please don't tell her there was a problem." After which he put the phone down and the holiday was changed, and I never heard from him again. There are more wonderful stories of ordinary and extraordinary people, but I think my 10 minutes are up, and I think that's all we have time for today. I invite you to visit the website www.hesped.org to explore the collection and to contribute Hespedim if you have any you would like to share with the world. By the way, this is a purely philanthropic project which was set up as a gift to the community, and it's also approved by the United Synagogue Burial Society, which sends out information about hesped.org to bereaved families. I will write my email address in the chat if you'd like to get in touch and find out more. Anyway, that's all from me, and I'll hand you back now to Dawn and Hidden Treasures, and thank you very much for having me this afternoon.
You're on, Dawn.
Right, so if any questions, thoughts, comments, don't know what.
Okay, and first of all, before we invite questions, thank you both for a very interesting presentation on both aspects. We've had talks before on Jews in World War I, World War II, also Jews in the army, and you've added another dimension in terms of more archives where you can get even more information about Jews in their everyday lives. I'm sure perhaps some of our members today remember Brady Club and we'll hear about that. Certainly I remember Burton on the High Street. I lived in Edgware and there was a big Burton's there, and it was Montague Burton before Philip Green got his hands on them, and I certainly remember them well. But I just wanted to mention before we ask questions about Jo Wagerman. Although I never went to JFS and I never met her in that context, certainly my grandchildren did, and they always had stories to tell me, I can tell you that, in terms of her determination and ruthlessness sometimes with pupils. But I actually met Jo. I used to run the US Community Cares group at the US head office. And I once was asked to come to Hendon because they were looking to set up another welfare group at the shore with Rabbi Ginsbury. And he said, but we're going to meet at Jo Wagerman's house in Hendon, and I'd like you to talk with her because she's going to help set it up. She told me what she wanted, and I had to sit and listen to what she wanted. And I sort of gave them a little bit of advice, but it was clear that Jo was very clear in her determination on the standards she wanted, the people she wanted. So it was a very interesting afternoon I had at Jo's house in Hendon, but a nice cup of tea and a Danish bun, I remember, to go with it. But certainly a very powerful, very interesting lady, and well worth meeting as I did at that afternoon. And that's a little bit I had to deal with her, but very clear on her expectations, that's for sure.
Always a good thing, always a good thing.
Yes.
Are there any other thoughts?
Any questions then for Dawn and for Miriam?
Well, or comments or thoughts or memories or anything.
I'd like to add to the Jo Wagerman situation. Regretfully, I never knew her, but I did go to her shiva because her sister I have known since teenage, and we're still in touch with a whole group of us. So her sister is delightful, as no doubt she was as well. So,
Daphne?
I belong to the other club, club in the East End, Oxford and St George's.
Ah, okay.
And Wendy Greengross used to come very often. She gave up a lot of time to work with us, to talk with us, with particularly the girls, about relationships. And she was a very interesting and very helpful lady. And I have lovely fond memories of her. So, and especially of Oxford and St George's Club as well.
I wonder where their archive is. It's probably at the London Metropolitan Archives. I'll just look that up.
Yeah, I mean it was founded by Sir Basil and Lady Henriques. What else?
1914.
In 1914. The Boys Club was in 1914 and the Girls Club was in 1915.
1915.
And
how interesting! I shall look that up.
Yeah, yes, it was a good place to be.
Just as an aside, my wife went to Peter Wagerman as her dentist for the first 20 years of her life.
It was amazing when I used to listen to my grandchildren the stories about their experience at JFS, and she was a total in control lady and set JFS, I think it's sort of in modern days, well on their track, and for the standards of education that they achieve today with all our Jewish pupils there.
Yeah. And somehow managed to find time to be the first woman president of the Board of Deputies, which I find amazing.
I went to the Grand Palais many times.
And
Anna Zelnicke was a great friend of my aunt and uncle. They used to come down every Saturday night to see a new show, which was at the Grand Palais. And her father was also in the show.
Yeah, right.
It's wonderful.
Well, I'm here again. Go on. I'm here again. I went to I think almost every production when I was a little girl at the Grand Palais. I knew the whole Zelnicke family, and I I've got quite a lot of Yiddish because of going to the Grand Palais. And also, I have to tell you, the only time my father ever lifted his hands to me was at the Grand Palais, because I was fidgeting and I wouldn't sit still, and he was trying to watch, and he got so angry, he actually smacked me, and I couldn't believe it. And he never ever did it again. That was the only time. And I was always warned, you'll get the Grand Palais smacking when I was 40. So I have lovely memories of.
There was another Jewish actress, Sadie Scott, who used to come to the Grand Palais.
Okay.
And she was lovely too.
Miriam, can I ask how you promote these eulogies? Obviously, you started in 2019, so it's fairly recent times, because unfortunately, when we all have been to grounds and listened to eulogies, much better these days when they're given by family rather than the rabbinic people who used to give them and read off a sheet before. So they're said with such meaning and understanding. How do people get to know about this? Because some of the things that I've heard over the years have been so wonderful to listen to about people's achievements, people's lives. It's part of, as you're trying to do, it's part of history, isn't it? In terms of where they've come from, where they got married, how their families grew and where they grew up, and the difficulties and challenges. Particularly, when you go and hear, thank goodness, people of 90 or 100 live very rich and full lives. There's so much to tell. So how do you create awareness, publicity of what you're doing?
Thanks, Stuart. I think it's building slowly by word of mouth, by people telling each other. I've advertised a bit in the Jewish Chronicle, in the Jewish News, been involved in a couple of podcasts. I was hoping that with the United Synagogue Burial Society sending out a letter from me in a pack to bereaved families, that might also help encourage people to contribute Hespedim to the collection. In terms of this last year, interesting, I was talking with somebody at the Jewish Bereavement Counselling Service, and I think for a lot of people this has just been such a hard and particularly horrible time to have lost loved ones, that I think people, particularly if people haven't been able to have a normal funeral and shiva, I think people are still a bit numb and in shock, and possibly after stone settings might be a time when people can really come to terms a bit more with what's happened in this last year. But I'm very appreciative of this opportunity to tell your Sage group about Hesped, and really I think it's by people knowing about it and telling each other, and you go to a funeral or shiva where you hear a particularly fascinating hesped, to find the right moment, the tactful moment. It might not be straight away, it might be some months later, to say perhaps you might think about sharing that, and it will be held and looked after for you in the Hesped archive.
Yes, because it's will be part of history in due course, and
yes,
yeah, indeed.
Otherwise, these end up, these sheets of paper end up in somebody's desk drawer or in a box in the loft, and are lost forever.
Yeah. Okay. Any more? Sorry.
Funny enough, somebody who I was talking with, who's in the Jewish community, and he couldn't believe that this this didn't exist already, because it seems so obvious. So anyway.
But it's a very succinct way of people telling their life stories, Jewish life stories, and so they're Jewish CVs, isn't it, in reality?
Stuart, Pamela Gold would like to speak.
Okay, I'll stop. Okay, go on, Pamela.
Have you got any archives of the South of the Thames Jewish Society, which was at Bolingbroke Grove in Clapham? I know I belong there. I first went when I was 17 and thrown out because I was too young. I'm not too young for anything anymore. But 52 couples actually got married as a result of meeting there, including myself.
So it was called South of the Thames
Jewish Society, or it was called Bolingbroke, either one.
I shall look. I mean, no, I haven't, and that's really interesting. I'll have a look. Thank you. Thanks for telling me about it.
The only thing I've got, I think, is an old program from when somebody we met on a cruise ship, actually, and then we got the program afterwards when he was the president, Maurice Lawson. He's since died, but most of them, I think, are now dead. But,
and it wasn't affiliated to any synagogue or anything like that?
Yes, it was a synagogue that it was held in. It was the Bolingbroke Synagogue.
Okay.
Where is that, Bolingbroke? Excuse my ignorance. Where actually is that?
Which years?
Where location was?
Which part of London?
Wandsworth.
South London.
Wandsworth.
Brixton.
Bolingbroke Road is in Clapham. My brother used to go to Bolingbroke Road School, and it was all around Clapham South, Clapham Common area.
Yeah.
But I've never heard. Me, Jasmine. I don't know why my picture isn't there, but it's
gone. Wall.
Oh, because there.
Yeah, that's better.
That's it. That's me. We were evacuated and came back to Clapham South, where my father managed to get us a flat during the war, and we lived in Clapham South. Our shul was Effra Road in Brixton, but my brother, I seem to remember that he went to a school down in Bolingbroke Road somewhere. I couldn't tell you the name of it, but that's what I know. And everybody from northwest London that I came into contact with when I met my late husband didn't believe that Jews lived south of the Thames. And I used to say to them, you know, London doesn't finish north of the Thames. There is a South London as well. And Brixton, Clapham, Streatham. I used to go to the Jewish club in Streatham that was attached. It was attached to the Liberal Shul, but it was the only club I could go to at the time, because Brixton Maccabi was too far for me. I had to, as a youngster, to go on the trams in those days. And my parents were very worried about me going halfway into the road to get on the tram. So I used to get the bus to Streatham. Right. But when you said Bolingbroke Road, it really triggered a memory for me. But I've never heard of that society. I was a youngster. Didn't go to those clubs. I was too young. I thought I'd just tell you.
Really bringing back some memories today, aren't we?
Yes, we really are. We really are.
Stuart, I was wondering, can you hear me?
Yes, carry on.
Yeah.
Wondering whether anybody has any memories of writing and delivering Hespedim.
Giving them.
Can I ask Miriam, when was it that people, ordinary people could give them? Because it always used to be, it was always the rabbi who gave.
It's been about 5 or 6 years now, at least, that you're allowed to write your own hesped and give it. I remember when my late husband passed away, my son gave a very, very wonderful hesped at his funeral, and he's been dead now. He died in 2014. So it was sort of a bit before that. In fact, I might even fish it out if I with the files and go through it again. If anybody wanted to send you a hesped with permission from the person who gave it, would they send it in the post or?
You just you can upload it onto you contribute it via the website. It doesn't go straight onto the website. It comes to me and to the team, and then we'll put it on the website. So there's a whole process. It says
with the photo.
Ideally, a photo is always wonderful. I think to put a face to a name is great. Yeah.
West Central.
Any more questions? Any observations?
If I just quickly mention, I think Bushy has had a speaker from there before, but it says the World Jewish Relief have archives. My daughter works for them, and she retrieves the information relating to people who parents came from Germany, Austria, and Czechoslovakia, and I think she's even met you, Dawn.
Yes.
Debbie Cantor.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating stuff. I learned things about my mother, which I had absolutely no idea about, in absolute detail. That the records which were kept at the time by the Central British Fund, I think it was called.
That's right.
Yes.
Angela, go on.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes, my husband joined West Central Club in Hand Court in Holborn that was started by the Montague family, Lily Montague and her sister, for youngsters who came from very poor families. My husband joined in 1963, and when we met in 65, he introduced me. There were a lot of marriages from there, and I wonder if there are any archives of that particular club.
Yeah,
that was West Central Club.
West Central. I don't know.
Yes, that was in Holborn.
Stuart, Anne Kezia wants to word.
Okay, hold on. Go on, carry on.
Was it affiliated to a synagogue movement or
well, yes. Well, originally the Lily Montague and her sister were actually very involved with the liberal shul, but that didn't affect us as youngsters. Many of us came from ordinary United synagogues, but we went there because it was a club and it was open 3-4 times a week, and they used to have lots of events and classes, and it was absolutely fantastic. And as I say, there were so many marriages from there.
Right.
I wondered if you had any archives from there.
I don't know of any. But again, I will look. I'll look.
Anne Kezia.
We have Anne Lasker.
Hello.
Yes.
And then Martin Moss.
Can I say something? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can see you and hear you.
Oh, jolly good. My husband attended JFS in 1938 in Bell Lane when he lived in the East End all those years ago. And I've still got prizes that he won, even as such a young boy, signed by Dr. Bernstein, who was the head, I believe. And then he was evacuated with the school when war was declared to Ely in Cambridgeshire, and he had, he's passed away now, but he spoke many times about the times he spent there. What do I do with his prizes?
If you would take some pictures of them,
right?
If you got with a phone, you can take some pictures, send them to me. I'd love to see them.
Okay.
Okay.
I will do that. Thank you.
Okay. Martin, did you want to? Sorry, Martin, did you want to come in?
About Ely, about JFS being evacuated to Ely. In fact, the local museum in Ely is hoping to do an exhibition about JFS being evacuated there, because for the town it's a really big thing. So I'll when they were going to do it just before the whole COVID business. I'm sure they'll do it once everyone's back in business. They'll do it. They'll start it again. But that's great. I'd love to see the prizes.
Martin?
Yes, it's actually Francis who's going.
Okay, Francis, go on.
Martin and I actually met at the West Central Club alongside many, many more couples. I reckon it was, whilst I was there, 80 to 100 couples met. And I know there's another person called Diane who also met her partner at the West Central Club.
Yeah,
I went there. Yes, Diane is there. She's waving to you. I went there before Angela, because I think we're just a couple of years or so older than Angela. But I want to say, I do have some photos. I mean, they're pretty old and they're just of groups of people.
Great.
But But I mean, if you want me to send you copies,
I'd love to. I'm beginning to think that it might be nice to do something about Jewish clubs.
Okay,
That
fine,
sounds
I
like
will. But the one thing I will say is that I have carried on meeting a group of club members, couples that we got friendly with there, and we've kept meeting. And I've been married 59 years. I know you can't believe that, but I've been married 59 years nearly. And we still see some of these couples. Now, at the moment, it's on Zoom, but up until COVID, we met pretty regularly. And we've got it's a very affectionate relationship because we met in those days. And the West Central Club, by the way, as Angela said, were the Montague sisters, who were strong in the liberal movement, but they were also, the West Central was affiliated to the local authority. And that's why they had all these classes as well as socializing. There were classes like Evening Institute and day classes, and that's why they had such a huge membership.
Wonderful. Lovely. Daphne?
On our committee, there's another lady called Marlene. Marlene and Stanley Peters met at the club, at Oxford St George's Club. Jeffrey and I met at Oxford St George's Club, and lots of other people met at Oxford St George's Club. And I think it's right that you should look at all these Jewish clubs. There were so many Jewish clubs, particularly in the East End and Stamford Hill and there during when we were teenagers.
So what sort of time period is this? When are we talking about?
Tell me the dates. I don't know.
50s,
1820.
Well, I mean, from when
shut up, Ronnie.
No, there were. Thank you. Just to add my two penny with, and I'll be corrected if Marlene thinks I'm wrong. No, don't forget, OCG, Oxford and St George's, started, as Daphne said earlier, 1914, the Boys Club, 1915, the Girls Club. And really from that time onwards, from the early 20s onwards, couples met up there and got married right the way through to certainly, I mean, I know Daphne and I met there in the 50s, it would have been. I think Marlene and Stanley the same, probably.
Yeah.
The early 60s at latest.
Yeah.
And all the clubs around us, West End Central was sort of a club that we knew about. Brady, the Old Boys Club, the Stepney Jewish Flag, Girls Club, Victoria Club, and Clacton Club. They all had clubs at the club.
Yeah, Marion Herbst.
Okay, yeah, got it. Okay, Marion.
Okay, my parents actually met at the West Central, and Henry and I were members of the West Central. They had the most wonderful classes, wonderful canteen, used to arrange holidays. The other lady involved very heavily there was Miss Nellie Levy, and she was a character in her own right. And the Montague sisters actually signed the register when my parents got married. And they were absolutely wonderful. We have wonderful memories.
Good. Anybody else?
Seems like Marlene. Unmute, Marlene.
Hello.
Yes, go on, Marlene. No, you're muted.
Right, sorry about that. Going on from what Jeffrey was saying, we celebrated 100 years of the club, which would have been 2014. And Stanley and I were on the committee who arranged this function. And there was about 750 people there, ranging, you can imagine, from every age group all the way through. And it was the most fascinating thing. And we had all pictures and everything of the club throughout the years. And it's absolutely amazing how all our generation went to these youth clubs, met our husbands or wives, and have always stayed friends with all the people they met at the club, which is something which I've always said my children missed out on when they didn't have these.
Why did they stop being so popular?
People moved down.
I think basically initially, when you think about how old Oxford and St George's was, it wasn't just a club, it was an opportunity for people to go and have a shower, which they wouldn't have had at home. It was an opportunity for people to do lots of things which they didn't have the facilities at home to do. nowadays, or our children's generation, they have everything. They didn't need to. So they found their own ways and, you know, didn't make use of the club.
I'm a little bit younger than Marlene, you see, and we found we found other clubs like Whiskey a Go Go, El Toro, because it changed. The population changed, moved about.
No. You've got it wrong, boy.
Hilary Schaffer.
That's nothing to do.
Unmute, sir. Unmute.
Yeah, what I was going to mention about in the late 40s, I wasn't at all well, and we had in those days an organisation called the Jewish Board of Guardians, who were based in Houndsditch, and they sent me off to a Jewish nursing home for youngsters, little ones, near Horsham in Sussex, and I spent about 6 weeks there, had the most wonderful time. And even in those days, we even had evacuees from Europe with little children came to stay there to recuperate. And I'm surprised that nobody seems to be aware of. I've got photographs taken at that time in I can't remember the actual town it was based in, but it was very, very popular amongst the poorer end of the Jewish community.
I'd love to see those photos if it were possible. No,
Yeah,
really,
so-
really, I would.
Yeah, it's
Can
matron.
you take a picture of the photo and send it to me?
I think, just to let all of you know that Dawn has put her email address up on the chat. So if you can access it through that and all the memories, the books, the photos.
Yeah, I'm fascinated. I'd love to see them.
I think Martin Moss would like to add a word.
Just wanted to say all these clubs, the West Central Association, were all affiliated to the Association of Jewish Youth, AJY, who had a house in Bracklesham Bay that I think we all used to go to for weekends on holidays, you know, with the club members. So everybody all these clubs were associated with the Association of Jewish Youth, and they must have archives somewhere. It was a massive group of people.
I'm very surprised that nobody has mentioned Maccabi. I mean, I went to Maccabi in my youth. Nobody's mentioned that.
Yes, I did too.
Yes, I think lots of us did.
I had my hand up. Can I say something
Yes, go
about
on.
Maccabi?
Carry on.
I was going to say when the next generation, our children who are in their 40s now, they actually went to Maccabi, and when Maccabi came to Edgware, then of course all of us living in that area, northwest London, that's where our children went. My son played for Maccabi from a tiny boy right up until he was 18, and then went on and played for the men's football. And then our children also started going to all the groups that were sort of Israeli groups, really, like FZY. I went to YPZ myself in Willesden, that was affiliated to Israel. And our children went to Israel with FZY. And that's where many of them met their friends, and some of them even their future husbands and wives. And our children are still friendly with the youngsters that they met actually at those groups. So they took over a little bit from the ones that we went to. And as Daphne or Marlene said, we didn't need the showers and all things like that. Our children obviously came from much more comfortable homes, but it was wonderful for meeting people, and those friendships definitely last.
Yeah. Howard, you're probably talking about Maccabi in Hampstead, are you?
I am.
Campaign
Also,
Garden.
I went to Bar Kochba in Finchley Road. Anybody remembers that?
Yeah.
What was that?
Bar Kochba, which was in
What was it?
Finchley Road. That was a Jewish youth club. I played football for them.
Okay.
Okay, unless there's anything else, thank you, Dawn, and thank you, Miriam, for this afternoon. We've obviously had quite a lovely journey down memory lane.
Good, good. That's what it's all about.
You've prompted some wonderful memories and some thoughts, and I think people are now going to go away and dig out some photos, some books, and hopefully they'll get those across to you. There's clearly so much more information and memories out there. You've done a lot yourselves, so much more that people have in their lofts, in their boxes, locked away, old photos.
Exactly.
Probably haven't seen the light of day for years, but perhaps now is the time, with a little bit more time before we come out of lockdown, go and dig some of those out and send them to you.
That's great. That's
so thank you for this afternoon. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you
and
for
thank you
having
for
us.
such an entertaining afternoon.
Yes.
It's Daphne here. Just want to say thank you to you both so much. It was very interesting, and it was lovely to go down memory lane very much. Thank you very, very much.
You're very welcome indeed.
Okay, just before we finish, just to let you know, on current affairs this Thursday, same time, same place. We've got Jeffrey Zimmel, who is taking that. And next Tuesday, we have the great pleasure of Rabbi Elchanan joining us. He's going to be talking about ideas for Pesach and other issues around Pesach this year, which again looks like being very different for us compared to many previous years. So look forward to, please join us on Thursday. I know they have some lively debates. I don't doubt there's one or two key current affairs that will come up on Thursday that you might want to contribute towards. And Rabbi Elchanan will be as entertaining as he always is. So look after yourselves, keep well, keep safe, and look after yourselves. See you either Thursday or see you next Tuesday. Thank you.
Bye.
Tuesday. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye, thanks.
Bye, thank you. Bye, Daphne.
Hi, could I just say before we go,
Go on then.
Stuart,
Yes.
are we still on? My husband played football for Bar Kochba. Somebody mentioned it. He played from 69 to 73 for Bar Kochba. And then in 1973, he joined our synagogue, Bushy United Football. But so Bar Kochba was his football association that he belonged to.
So he actually played for Bushy Shul football?
He was a founder member, yeah.
Gosh.
And then he started the second team. And most of our friends that we met once we were married, we met through his playing football. And we're all still friends, all from Bushy.
Oh, lovely. So have you lived in Bushy all the time since?
We moved to Bushy in 1973. We did move away, but we still stayed on belonging to the shul. So we're really Bushy people. We only moved up the road to Stanmore for a few years, but we never changed.
Good.
So we're very loyal to Bushy. Yeah.
Good. Absolutely. Good.
Okay, everybody, nice to see you all, and do tune in again on Thursday when I think there may be one particular topic which may get mentioned.
Can't think what that is, Ronnie.
No. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Bye all.
Bye.